One of the biggest challenges for organizations is to figure out where to invest your resources to make sure you're maximizing the impact you can have, especially because I'm sure your organization is the same as the ones I've been involved with. 5% of the work of the people are doing 95% of the work. So you get yourself spread way too thin. How do you invest those resources to make sure you're having the biggest impact on the political process? I have with me today Rhonda Belford. Rhonda is the first female chairman of the Republican State Central Committee, or I'm sorry, the Republican County Chairmen's Association.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Yeah, there's a lot to say. You're also the chairman of the Hardin County Republican Party. You're on the State Central Committee for the Republican Party. You wear a lot of hats. I don't know how you keep up with it, but Rhonda, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I just hurried back in as the 12th State Central Committee woman. We have 34 counties of the southern region, but my new hat that I inherited in August was all 102 counties as the first female chairman of the Chairmen's Association, and it's been very enjoyable. But it's busy work. Hardin County, as a chairman of that particular county, is one of the smallest counties, one toe in the river. I'm actually Kentucky, but so it's a pleasure. So you might get that, but some of that southern charm does help. And all politics is local. It doesn't matter if you're in a small county or if you're all the way up into Chicago. So it's about taking care of your people. And
my dad went to college at University of Kentucky. So actually, and my family lived in Kentucky for a while. So I know your region a little bit.
There you go.
It's a big state. And I think people miss that.
Yes.
How big this state is and how diverse this state is. And so one of the things we wanted to cover was, how do you make sure that you're investing your resources wisely for these counties, especially? How do you make sure? Because you've got limited funding, whether it's a central or southern Illinois district where maybe funding is more limited, or maybe it's the Chicagoland district where you have some more funding, but you also have such massive districts that funding disappears very quickly. How do you make sure that you're using those funds as wisely as possible? I've got some more specific questions for you, but just generally, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the problem is here in our county, we don't have a lot of funds. We barely have any funds. I live in actually what would be considered the poorest district in the state. And, our Congressman Mike Boss, he's got a tough time because it's the poorest district. So a lot of our events that we have, I put on basically for free, for donations only, because our true north, or what we want to do, is to mainly get people out and let them see candidates, let them see what's going on. We want to educate them, plus feed them and they'll come. And a lot of times we do that for nothing. And I've had people out of Springfield, other areas, that'll say, well, how do you do that? We couldn't get people to come out for a potluck. They wouldn't do that for anything. They wouldn't cook something and come. They'll have to have it catered or something else. But you know what? People like to get out, and they like to get together, and I've never had a problem with people saying, oh, what would you like me to bring, Rhonda? So see, it's almost like a family reunion down here. And basically it is, because everybody's related to everybody. And so you just do whatever works. And that's one thing that I think that you struck on when you've put out some of your analyses of the last midterm election, because we have to get candidates out that relate to our particular area where we live, because people are not going to vote for somebody that doesn't relate to them. So we've got to get candidates who relate to our districts. So that's the very same thing. And when people are going to donate their time and they're going to donate their money, especially even our big dollar donors, they want to know that it's somebody who is going to relate to them, and they're going to see to them, and they're going to meet them where they are. That's just the fact of the matter. It doesn't matter if you're down in my neck of the woods or you're all the way up in the Chicagoland area.
Yeah, well, and I think what you're speaking to is that candidate quality. If we're going to talk about investing our resources, which is time, it's money, it's talent, investing those into these districts, you got to know that you've got a candidate in that district who can win. Otherwise, you're asking your volunteers and your donors and your committeemen and your precinct captains and everybody else to support these candidates that on November is probably not going to win. So to you, it sounds like step one would be make sure you're recruiting quality candidates who match the districts who can win. Am I framing that correctly?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I don't know anybody, even someone who's got money, nobody wants to see that their money is being thrown away. And when they vest that, whether it's their time, their talent, or their money, they want to see that that's being put to good use. And I don't care who that's by. If people are entrusting that to, whether it's the state party, whether that's the local party, they want to see that whatever it is they're vesting in them, it's going to good use. And if they trust you, they're going to vest in you, whether it's, just like I said, whether it's their money, because I've had people walk up to me in my own small county and say, Rhonda, when you need something, I want to give y'all some money. It's kind of nice that you don't have to ask somebody for money if they'll actually come to you and say, I'd like to give y'all some money. Hey, that's a nice switch. Usually people are, hey, hitting you up or sending you a letter or whatever. It's kind of nice and it makes you feel good if somebody trusts you enough and feel like you're doing a good job that they'll actually come to you and say, hey, can I give you some money?
Yeah.
That's a switch.
And you know what? You're right. If you can develop that trust, and I think if volunteers, if donors, if people see that you as the leader of the organization are being wise with your resources and you're making the most of that, it's money and it's also time. Those volunteers are willing to give you time because they know you're making the most of it. You're not just sticking them in an office to stuff some envelopes to waste their time. They know you're making the most of their time. And so they're going to come a second time and a third time and a fourth time because, as you said, they trust you. That's huge.
Because they trust you and they know you're doing it wisely and you're going to put it to where it's supposed to go. And that's really what it's about. It's a matter of trust. And if they don't trust you, you might as well forget it. And that's the same way, whether it's with an organization or it's with a candidate. And if you don't say, you should say what you mean and you should mean what you say. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah. And I think let's talk about the other side of that coin, the more difficult side for leaders like you, where when you've done that, when you've prioritized districts and hey, listen, we've got a great chance to win this one and we've got to hold this seat because this is our incumbent and she's doing a great job. And this district over here, we're just not going to work this time around. So you're going to invest your resources wisely where they're going to make the most difference. How do you deal with this district where you've said, you know what, it just isn't in the cards? That candidate's still going to want help. That district, it's not like we want to completely ignore it, but every minute you spend there isn't necessarily leading to a win, whereas it might over here. How do you as a leader deal with the complications of that?
And see, that's going to be the tough, that's kind of, I guess, what you'd say is tough love, but that's what is the essence of a good leader, where you have to listen. And that's part of what the organization is about. And that's really what is kind of the nice and not so nice part of it when you want to enlist. And that's what the chairman's organization is about. We're supposed to listen and talk together and then push that advice on up the ladder to the state party. That's where I think we're having a problem with the educational component. People don't really understand exactly what it's all there for. It's not all there to be the all-seeing, all-knowing, just tell you everything to do. We're all part of the grassroots. If you vote Republican, you're a part of the state party. We're all in this together. And so we're all supposed to kind of push and move together fluidly. That doesn't mean we have to agree with everything together, but it does mean we're supposed to kind of work in unison and kind of encourage and move together. And at some point, we're going to have to say, maybe this isn't the time. That doesn't mean it's never the time for that particular district, but maybe our resources, because we're not flush with cash, everybody wants to think that at the top, hey, we don't have millions and gazillions, because guess what? We're a working people. We're not necessarily just, a fat cat people. We're a working people. So we have to use those resources wisely, and we have to pick and choose and prioritize. And so it doesn't mean that maybe next time that's not the district, but we have to, do what's possible and let the good Lord do what's seemingly impossible, and have a little faith and have a little patience sometimes.
I think that's the key. I wanted to ask you about that because we always get so hyper-focused on the next election. You and I are recording this where the next election is going to be 2024. And so we're always hyper-focused on that. But as you said, patience. We did not fall into this position where we're limited on support, and we're struggling in some of these districts and some of these counties overnight. In some of these areas, I think about the Chicagoland area. Lake County went blue a bit ago. DuPage is just going blue the last few years. McHenry is showing some signs of going the wrong direction. Will County's coming our direction, which is nice. But these movements in politics take time. It doesn't happen in one cycle.
No.
And so talk to me about that patience, that maybe in that district that I mentioned earlier, that we couldn't win this time around. What might you do to build up so that you could win that district in 4 years or in 6 years? Like, what are some of those longer term strategies?
Well, what's happening is some of those folks in that Chicagoland area, they're moving out into some of these suburban areas, but they're taking their politics with them. And it's changing some of those areas that happen to be more red. Well, it's turning them more of a purple and more of a blue, and which is a problem. So, which is frightening to everybody. But we're going to have to adjust to that, and we're going to have to start changing our strategies to either, start shifting them, moving them back into the red positions. So we've got to start looking at the ways to move them into what we need them to be, which is more Republican again.
Yeah.
So, and it didn't happen overnight. We're not going to be able to change that overnight. Just like in my particular area, we used to be really, really blue. We were really blue. So those didn't happen overnight as well. Like I said, it took years of moving us into this red position. So it's the same type of scenario. So it does take a little patience, and it does take a little work, but we have to strategize, and we have to get those people back into place.
Well, we've seen some movement in our direction. Obviously, the East St. Louis, Madison County region has been huge, moving in our direction, but that didn't happen.
They are.
Will County as well we've really seen some great movement in the south suburbs. And so there are areas. And so I wanted to ask you, what did you see? What investments have you seen on the ground that have led to that improvement? What's been done to the infrastructure? Maybe recruiting a candidate who runs now, builds up some name-identity, and then runs a second time. Like, what are those strategies? Those more patient strategies that you've seen work that give you that long-term success, and maybe some of those areas that are bluer right now?
Well, I think for one thing, I think you've seen candidates that have run. I know myself, I ran for state rep years ago. And while it wasn't necessarily successful, I was running against a machine at that time. Of course, I know a few years ago, people, if they ran for a state rep or whatever they were running for, it was just a known commodity. You didn't even expect to win the first time. The first time you were expected to be getting your name out there. And you know what? You didn't even expect to get any help, not monetarily, not anything else. You were on your own. It wasn't even something expected. And then if you got your name out there the next time, not the first time, you weren't even expected to be able to get any help monetarily. You spent your own money, and you weren't even expected to win. And guess what? They said, run again. And you weren't even expected. Most of those representatives, most of those legislators, it was about the third time before they ever won. Wow. Isn't that interesting?
That's a lot of work. So,
yes. Talk about work. Talk about disappointment. Talk about, and now today it's like, you don't win the first time. Well, and, and if you didn't get any help from whoever it was, you were mad as a hornet. Well, it just didn't work that way. But, so this is what I'm talking about.
Well, Rhonda, let me ask you about that real quick, because we've had recruiting candidates is one of the hardest things to do in politics. You know this. And so what we've seen happen the last couple cycles is some of those people who are out there recruiting candidates, I'm not saying that they're intentionally being untruthful, but they are a little bit being untruthful, where they set the expectations so high for that candidate, where they tell them unreasonably that you're going to do this, when really they're never going to do that. They're going to be here.
No.
And so then the candidate runs, they're disappointed in the lack of help, they're disappointed in the results, and then they quit and they never run again.
It's not fair.
How do we show that honesty to our candidates, where we still get them to say yes, but at least they go into it with the right expectations?
Well, I think that's where you really need to talk it over with your family. You need to really understand that you really have to have, of course, you hear this all the time. You have to have the fire in your belly. You really have to have the want to. You really have to have a servant's heart. That's really what it's about, the desire to serve. You'll never be able to lead unless you really first want to serve. That's really what it's about. It can't be about, oh, you think you're going to really get out there and you're going to make a lot of money. Because trust me, you can make more money doing something else. You can go broke doing this kind of stuff. You know, you spend more than you honestly make. But it's really about the servant's heart and the desire to really help your community, your region, then your district, then your state. That's really what you have to do. And it has to be about that desire to do that, honestly. Uh, that's basically where I'm at. I started cutting my teeth as a 13-year-old kid, standing out and handing cards out, helping other candidates. And that's just how you do with any of it. And then the next thing you know, somebody's saying, would you consider running? That sort of stuff. And then that's what you do, just because there's an open seat and the need is there. And half the time you're like, well, I don't know about this, but you do it because you feel the desire, you feel the need, and it's to help your community, it's to help your state, and you're doing it because you truly desire to help others. And
Yeah.
that's what it's got to be about. And you have to search your soul, and you've got to have buy-in from your family. If you don't, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. And that's what people ought to understand. And we
Going into it with as we've talked about, the right expectations, and
yes,
especially because it's going to take time. I mean, we all want to turn this thing around tomorrow. We're all sick and tired of where we're at. We're sick of losing, especially because the other side just seems to love to rub it in so much, especially under Pritzker. And so we want to win right now. But sometimes a win looks a little bit different in that district, where maybe if it's a really blue district, that win is building up your name recognition so you could run for a county position next time around, or run for mayor or school board or library board. I mean, we have to have a little bit of a longer runway in a lot of these regions, because again, I've only been doing politics in this state for 17 years now. It sounds like you've been doing it for a little bit longer than that, but for as long as I've been doing politics, we've been on the down slope as a party and as a right of center movement, if you will. And so it's not going to turn around right away. But if we can have that long-term strategy where we look for those incremental wins, we can start to turn this thing around.
And we will. I've always been a glass half full kind of person, not a glass half empty. And I'm an old cheerleader. I've spent my whole life cheerleading for, candidates, for all kinds of causes. Most of them civic things that always cost me. And, but the thing about it is that I want to say, you don't always have to win a particular seat to be successful. And anybody that's running for an office needs to understand that. And I've had every one of the gubernatorial candidates call me, and every one of them said the same thing. They felt led by God to do this. And I have no doubt that that's the case. But I know all of them were not going to win. And then that's the same way with any seat. I have no doubt that you have to have a calling and feel led to do whatever it is you're going to do. That does not mean you're not going to be successful if you don't actually take the seat that you're running for. There is different ways to measure your success. Yeah. And I believe we're all leading and going in the right direction. And if we hold true to our platform and we're going to be successful. We're going to see successes. We're seeing successes, and we will be successful. I have no doubt about it.
Well, I love the hopeful message. Just a minute or so left here, and I wanted to ask you one more question about targeting and I like to say strategery, the old Bushes.
Yeah,
but
so
we've seen this work. Some of these unique strategies work, where in Will County they specifically put all their efforts into a couple districts. In DuPage County, where they are multi-member districts in the county level, they actually ran only one candidate in one of the districts, because they knew if they ran one candidate, they could get that candidate across. Whereas if they ran multiple, the Democrats would win as a slate. What are some of those unique strategies that you've heard of, or that you've seen, or that you've tried, where we could maybe start playing chess a little bit and not constantly playing checkers?
Well, I'm looking across here. I have got a whole list of about 28 counties of things that they did, where Carroll County flipped, and they've got 8 Republicans now, 1 Democrat. Cass County, they don't have a single Republican that lost on their ballot. I've got all kinds, there are certain counties that their Democrats have just fell off and come over to the Republican side. So, I mean, I can't name just different types of strategies because there's different types of strategies that have worked in different counties. So I can see doing that. But I'm just trying to think of one in particular. I've got Will County on here where they flipped 14 to 12.
Yep. Well, I mean, that was a unique situation that I know we'll be talking about in the future.
It was very unique there. Yeah. McHenry County carried all of their countywide offices, and they were the only county in the Chicagoland area that carried Darren Bailey. So that's
so I guess
very
what
interesting.
What I would maybe say is that to put a bow on this, it would be the idea of teaching you to fish rather than fishing for you. We're not going to necessarily give people X because your county is unique. But what we would say is think strategically. What are things you can do? And maybe call people like Rhonda. I won't give your cell phone number out here unless you want to, but call people like Rhonda who are there to help you think through these strategies.
Yes.
How can we be creative? How can we be smart? It's about being putting in the work, but sometimes it's also about being smart with your strategy.
Being smart and working together, uniting, not working apart, but working together. We're starting to do trainings for people that would become PCs, candidates. Start looking for those people and start filling those slots. We're doing trainings all across the state that are going to start actually in June. So reach out, look for those. They're going to be on our rcca.gop website. They're going to be advertised. Get involved. Be sure if you're a chairman to get on those chairman's calls. Get involved. That's going to be the biggest strategy. Don't just sit out. Don't be a complainer. You know, be an encourager. Be a uniter, not a discourager, but a uniter. To me, that's the best strategy right now. Get educated. That's the best way. That's the best strategy I can think of right now. Is get involved. You know, to me.
Well, and as we've been talking about
your area.
These elections happen in even numbered years, the major ones, but they're won right now. The hard work that goes in right now in 2023 is what's going to determine whether or not we win in 2024.
That's the truth. And it's going to go all the way up. And somebody just asked me earlier today, well, when is the election starting? I said, it's starting right now. So
yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I mean, my team gets crazy because on election night, I'm not having drinks to celebrate with them. I'm already putting in tasks for the next election. I'm like, here we go. The next one's already started. So yeah, you're right. Well, Rhonda, I really appreciate your time. This has been an awesome discussion. I know I'm speaking for Rhonda, but I can tell you that the County Chairman's Association, the Central Committee, the Republican Party, they're doing the best they can with the resources they have, and they want to help you. So if you
we're here to help.
Or if you want to talk through strategies, there are counties who have done similar things. And so what Rhonda can do, and she's done it before. I know she's done it for some friends of mine where you say, hey, I've got a question about blank. And she'll say, hey, the chairman of this county actually ran into that problem and he's awesome at this. I'm going to give you his number. You should call him. I mean, she'll help you make those connections.
Yes.
But it's right now, putting in that work, being smart, targeting our resources. We're not going to win every race. As a matter of fact, this is the blue state. We're going to lose most races, but how can we pick up some key races so that each cycle we start to build on our successes? And suddenly you look back and you realize, man, look at that mountain I just climbed. It's possible.
It's called I think I can. I think I can. And before you know it, we will. And we will. I firmly believe that, we don't know all the answers. We don't have all the answers, but we will certainly do our best. If we don't know, we'll find the answers and we'll put you in contact with the ones who can. Nobody's perfect. We're all just people and we're all just working together to try to strive to make it a better Illinois. So
perfect. That's a great place to stop. Rhonda, thank you again for your time. Thanks everybody for watching this, and we'll keep in touch with more strategies in the future.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.